He doesn't do any household chores or parenting, and is relying on me financially. I had accepted my younger husband, going out with his friends every weekend, thinking he is still young. However, it turned out he was not with his friends, but on a trip with his affair partner.
I'm going to stay over at my colleague who transferred to a different region. Take care of the big cleanup.
I knew he lied and went on an affair trip, and I couldn't forgive him at all. I decided to throw himself and his belongings away while he was on the affair trip. Later, he was picked up by someone, and an unexpected outcome awaited him. I am Maria, a full-time housewife who will turn 29 this year. We are a family of 3. I have a 3 years younger husband and a 2-year-old daughter. I met my husband, Josiah, at work. Josiah joined the company as a new employee, and I became his mentor, starting our story. He was sociable, made a lot of mistakes, but didn't get discouraged when corrected, and I was drawn to his bright and hardworking nature. Moreover, he had a quite handsome face. With a face that could rival movie stars, and a personality that people liked, there was always a crowd around him. However, at that time, I was work-focused, a no-frills woman with no interest in makeup, and I had been single my whole life. So, I had given up on asking out to Josiah, who was liked by everyone for his looks and personality. Even so, I tried desperately to become a woman who suits him, watching makeup tutorials and asking stylish friends to coordinate some outfits for work that I purchased. Whether those efforts paid off or not, 6 months after I started thinking about him, I was asked, "You've become really beautiful recently.
Did you find someone?"
It was the first time I had been told such a thing, and not knowing how to respond, I remained silent. Then, Josiah said,
"I don't know who the other person is, but how about choosing me?"
Of course, I said yes without hesitation. From then on, we started dating, and 6 months into our relationship, he proposed, and we got married. Marriage with the man of my dreams was delightful, and marrying the first person I dated felt like something out of a drama, thinking, this person is my destined one. Although, reality was not that simple. Throughout our relationship, being younger than me, he often sought comfort from me. He liked holding hands, enjoyed having his head on my lap, and there was a lot of sugarly couple-like physical affection, with many things, like payments and orders when we went out, left to me to handle. There were times when I thought, do it yourself. But when he asked,
"Please, I can only ask you,"
I couldn't help but feel like,
well, I guess I have to.
Perhaps it's his survival skill that works, due to his beautiful face and unique sweet, adorable vibe. During our dating days, perhaps, overindulging him became a problem, as even after marriage and both of us working, household chores were entirely left to me. In terms of finances, it wasn't a 50-50 split. I covered 70%, and he covered 30%. Moreover, he seemed to spend all of his leftover income from expenses on his hobbies, without saving anything at all. While I was saving most of mine, thinking about future children, and our own home. Initially, I thought,
it's understandable that our experiences with housework differ since I lived alone, and he lived with his parents before our marriage. Considering our incomes, his being lower, it's unavoidable that I contribute more. He's still young and in his prime for having fun. Maybe he hasn't fully grasped the future yet.
But even when I became pregnant, his lifestyle remained unchanged. Household chores during pregnancy were truly tough. Already exhausted from work during pregnancy, plus severe morning sickness in the early to mid-term, and in the later stages, a large belly, making it difficult to bend or stand without getting tired. Despite witnessing all this, Josiah never offered to help. If I tried to ask him for assistance with housework, he sensed it and said, "I'm always grateful to you, honey.
I can't do housework, so marrying a wonderful woman like you was the best decision."
This sweet talk demolished any intention I had to ask for help. While it may have been my fault for indulging him, even after our daughter was born, he didn't change. Despite quitting my job after giving birth, he didn't take on parenting or household duties, continuing to go out late for drinks, like he did when single, spending weekends with friends, or traveling, and he was hardly ever at home. Still, occasionally, he would offer words of comfort to me, and once a year, he would invite me on a trip for my birthday, and I forgave everything.
He will prioritize family when our daughter grows up, I thought.
I realized how naive that idea was when our daughter turned 2. On that day, I attended a high school friend's wedding. I wanted to leave our daughter with Josiah, but as usual, he had plans for the weekend, so I asked my mother back at home. The wedding took place in a chapel in the city, and the reception was scheduled in a few large private rooms within a French restaurant. A gourmet friend from her student days had apparently decided we must choose this place. The wedding went smoothly, but on the way to the reception venue, I spotted my husband in that restaurant. He had his arm around a woman wearing a stylish black dress, and they were walking very closely. The distance was too close for comfort to be just friends. My excitement about attending my friend's wedding vanished instantly, and I lied about our daughter having a fever to leave the reception early. Even after returning home, the image I witnessed earlier lingered in my mind. That day, Josiah had said,
"I'm going on a motorcycle tour with a friend from university."
I was certain he has an affair. I knew he had many female friends, and I was aware of him going out with women because he told me. But this time was different. The friend he mentioned was a man, and he hadn't gone on a motorcycle tour at all. I was convinced he was lying about meeting a woman, 100% certain. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming anger, thinking that I might have been deceived by him all this time. During my morning sickness, when I was desperately doing housework, and when I was struggling with unfamiliar parenting tasks, he might have been going out with a woman. It was too much to handle. My affection for him quickly faded, and at this point, I decided to thoroughly expose his affair. I contacted my parents and arranged for them to take care of our daughter for another day. I debated whether to tell the truth, but decided to wait until I had gathered evidence. I lied to my parents that I was feeling unwell. The next day, I visited a private detective. I handed over a photo of my husband, shared details about his workplace and background, and asked them to investigate him thoroughly. The detective advised,
"Act normally with your husband until we find out. Be careful not to get caught."
However, I didn't even want to see Josiah's face, so after picking up our daughter, I immediately went to the bedroom. When he returned home late at night and saw me in the bedroom, he asked,
"What's wrong? Are you okay?"
with a seemingly concerned tone. A couple of days ago, I might have felt love hearing those words, but to me, who now knew the truth, it meant nothing. About half a month later, I received a call from the detective. It turned out my husband had been having an affair for the past 2 years. The other woman was a married, older nurse. The restaurant where I saw them was her regular spot, and Josiah had been going there about once a month for the past 2 years. I was surprised that she was married, but according to the detective, nurses have shift schedule, making it difficult for their spouses to expose affairs. What shocked me even more was that the nurse worked at the hospital where our daughter was born. It might be a coincidence, but the connection between a 2-year-old daughter and 2 years ago felt particularly unsettling. On that day, I decided to divorce my husband and devised a certain plan.
"Well, I'm going to stay over at a colleague who transferred to a different region. Take care of the big cleanup."
Despite the busy year-end period, he pushed the major cleaning onto me. This is something that would typically irritate me, but I grinned this time, thinking about my plan.
Take care.
I'll bring back souvenirs. Holding our daughter, waving her hand, he seemed oblivious. Returning to the room, I told my daughter,
Today, we're going on a trip. Let's go see the sea.
excited because she loves fish, my daughter happily exclaimed.
Yay! See? First, let's take a little nap.
Putting my daughter to sleep, I used that time to prepare. I had been discreetly packing my belongings, and my husband's belongings. I couldn't touch the items in the bedroom and living room until now. I sorted and packed them into cardboard boxes. Finally, I disassembled the crib, put my daughter to sleep in the stroller, and called a moving company. My belongings went to my parents' house, and I disposed of all my husband's belongings. Except for the household appliances provided in the apartment, the room was left empty. Pushing the stroller, we headed to a hotel with a sea view in a different city that my daughter had always wanted to see. The travel items I had sent in advance were already waiting in the room. Looking out the window at the view, my daughter joyfully exclaimed,
See? See?
I gazed at the sunset over the sea, feeling a mixture of sadness and clarity. Exhausted from packing and the journey, I decided to go to bed early that day. To deal with the unpleasant matter today, before going to bed, I sent a text message to my husband, a two-shot photo with his affair partner. Despite going to bed early yesterday, I must have still been tired because I ended up sleeping until the early afternoon. I hurriedly checked my daughter's bed, and she was holding onto the railing, gazing at the sea intently, which made me smile. I had planned to eat something outside for lunch, but since my daughter wouldn't leave the window, I decided to order room service. My daughter was impressed with the fish-themed children's plate. Although she didn't eat much, she seemed to enjoy herself throughout. At that moment, my husband called. Presumably, he noticed the two-shot photo with his affair partner that I sent before bedtime. I didn't answer the call, but I sent a message saying, I have no intention
of living with you anymore. Be happy with your affair partner.
Even after that, he continued to call, so I blocked his calls to avoid annoyance. Finally finishing lunch with my daughter, we went near the sea, played for a bit. When we returned to the hotel, it was already dark outside. Checking the phone I had left in the room, I saw a message from my brother. When I tried calling back, it didn't connect, but after about 15 minutes, he called again. According to him, Josiah rushed back to our home apartment after seeing my text message, only to find an empty space. He thought I might have returned to my parents' house, so he went there to inquire. However, since I'm on a trip with my daughter, the only ones at my parents' house are my parents and my brother, who are furious after learning about my husband's affair. My husband seems to have been blamed severely by my parents, and my brother laughed, saying, it's unusual to see Josiah, who's always
so carefree, looking downcast.
After being blamed by my parents, when Josiah was leaving my family home, my brother, at the entrance, said,
From now on, please communicate through her lawyer,
and handed over the lawyer's contact information. In response, Josiah attacked my brother, shouting, you are not in a position to decide. It was something I asked my brother based on my decision, not his unilateral one. My brother narrowly avoided the blow, and Josiah stumbled and hit his shoulder on the stair near the entrance. He seemed quite in pain, so my brother drove him to the hospital. He got a complex fracture, and he's currently in surgery. During this opportunity, my brother collected his phone. Josiah, who had been relying on me, and had almost everything under my name, including his smartphone, was, of course, in my name.
I glanced at it earlier, and probably from his lover? There were some amazing messages, haha.
My brother laughed. Apparently, there were messages related to evidence destruction, like Josiah, we can't meet for a while,
but we'll just have to endure it. And, I only like you, so even if we can't meet, I won't have another affair. Josiah, Please only be with me too.
The next day, I woke up early, played a lot with my daughter at the sea in the morning, then left my sleeping daughter with my parents, and headed to my husband's hospital. Personally, I had no desire to see him at all, but since Josiah's parents were coming to visit, and it seemed that today was the best opportunity to include everyone, I decided to go. Arriving at the hospital, his parents, who had heard the situation from my brother, looked apologetic, and probably did not know what to say. When I entered the hospital room, Josiah, upon seeing my face, immediately said,
Maria, it's not what you think. That was just like a sugar mommy arrangement.
And started making weird excuses. According to him, that woman was his financial supporter, pretending to be his girlfriend, in exchange for money. There was no love involved, everything was done for the sake of money. He claims that it was only a relationship twice, once when I sent the evidence photos and this time. While thinking, if there could be any better excuse, I asked, so, where is that money? He, after a significant pause, said, well,
it hasn't been transferred yet. We agreed with 3 dates and the next one is the third agreement.
It was clearly a lie, and I couldn't help but feel astonished. However, I was no longer irritated. As a precaution, I threw other evidence photos that I had brought with me at him. Seeing those photos, his mother broke down in tears. Ignoring her, I handed the pre-filled divorce papers to Josiah, who was sitting vacantly.
I've had enough of your lies. We're getting a divorce. I'll take custody. Details like child support and asset division will be handled through my lawyer,
I said and left the hospital room. Despite his cries of,
wait, it's a misunderstanding,
I didn't pay any attention. I felt incredibly relieved. Returning to my parents' house and checking Josiah's phone, I found a considerable number of messages from his affair partner.
Why aren't you responding? Hey, are you choosing your wife over me? I can't believe it.
The frustration of his affair partner, gradually growing irritated due to the lack of communication from Josiah, was evident. Finally, messages arrived saying,
I'll break up with you now. Don't contact me anymore. I've returned your belongings. Goodbye.
Even though they had been together for 2 years, seeing them break up so easily, over not being reachable for just a while, became oddly amusing. While that lady probably thinks it's the end with Josiah, I had no intention of ending it for her. I had already taken action. Later on, it seems the registered mail arrived at her, and we scheduled a meeting at the law firm to discuss it. The affair partner, Cecilia, brought her husband along, and she completely denied the affair.
Josiah and I are just friends. It's not a suspicious relationship like this. If you continue with these baseless claims, I'll sue you for defamation,
she shouted. Her husband seemed to believe her side of the story, so I showed them printed text messages from my ex-husband's phone. The messages contained exchanges between him and Cecilia, ranging from affectionate messages to planning affair trips.
This is forgery,
Cecilia screamed.
Making up fake text messages, I'll really sue you for that.
With a sigh at her, who was glaring at me, I showed them the photographic evidence this time. Instantly, she panicked and said,
This is different. It's different.
Her husband, his face filled with anger, slapped her.
I'm divorcing you. Wait. Darling. I love only you. I don't want a divorce.
Bleeding from her nose after being hit, Cecilia desperately tried to stop her husband. The chaos was then calmed down by the lawyer. Afterward, the lawyer primarily led the discussion. I was able to get Cecilia's signature on a settlement document, which stated a compensation of $30,000 and a prohibition on approaching me and Josiah in the future. Once the discussion was settled, Cecilia's husband suggested, "Now, let's talk about our divorce." Having obtained the settlement document, I had no reason to object them. I left the law firm. Later, I went there for a consultation on claiming from my Josiah, and it turned out that my lawyer would be representing Cecilia's husband, a challenging situation, as he admitted with a wry smile. I settled for no property division with Josiah, but I obtained $30,000 in compensation. He agreed to pay $300 per month for our daughter's child support until she turns 18, a total of 16 years. The child support agreement allowed me to demand the full amount immediately, if he missed a single payment. Although I used to love looking at Josiah's face, I no longer wanted to see him, so I left the negotiations to the lawyer. Apparently, Josiah kept saying things like,
"I want to get back together,"
and "I can't live without her." Strangely, he never mentioned our daughter, as the lawyer informed me. I felt sorry for my daughter, wondering what kind of person I had married. Afterward, I found a work-from-home job, while taking care of my daughter at my parents' house. My daughter entered kindergarten and became more talkative, but she never brought up her father. She probably had few memories of spending time with him. Although Josiah consistently paid the child support every month, I received a surprising call from the lawyer one day, informing me that he suddenly handed over the entire amount. When I asked the lawyer for details, due to this affair being leaked to his co-ene by Cecilia's partner, he lost his job, and apparently decided to work at a host club. So he encountered a good customer, who runs a company, decided to quit being a host, and it seems he started being supported by her. When he discussed the child support matter with her, she said, "I don't want you being involved
with other women,"
and apparently, she covered the entire lump sum. He came dressed in nice clothes and brought the entire amount in cash, causing even the lawyer to chuckle. 5 years later, when my daughter was in the 2nd grade of elementary school, I received a sudden call from the police. It seemed that Josiah had been arrested for theft, and he had nominated me as his guarantor.
"I divorced him a long time ago."
I tried to refuse, but the police seemed troubled as well.
"Just hear him out once,"
they suggested, and reluctantly, I agreed to meet my ex-husband. Meeting him after a long time, he looked worn out, his once proud face now sunken, and far from appealing. Listening to his story, I learned that the lady supporting him turned out to be married, and the affair was exposed to her husband. It struck me that he always falls for such people. She chose her husband instead of Josiah, and demanded compensation and reimbursement for what she had spent on him. Thrown out of the provided apartment, he, with nothing but the clothes on his back, struggled even to afford a meal that day, leading him to commit theft.
"Help me, I'm repentant. I only have you,"
he pleaded. However, considering his self-inflicted situation, after hearing the full story, I refused to become his guarantor, and instead provided the police with his parents' contact number. It seemed his parents also refused to get involved in the mess, and despite being a first-time offender, he might face real jail time. Although the police informed me about this, I still refused to take responsibility. I have no intention of getting involved in any trouble willingly, nor do I plan to reconcile with my ex-husband. My daughter has grown up, and some people suggest remarriage, but I have no intention of being with anyone anymore. I am well aware that I don't have knack for choosing men after the incident with my ex-husband. I cannot afford to cause any more trouble for my precious daughter. Fortunately, she has grown into an honest and good girl. Recently, she's entering a bit of a rebellious phase and doesn't hold my hand, but I want to cherish the current life with my daughter and parents.